Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing Batutina's Legacy Challenge winning Blue-Black Scam list. Now, I am recording this on Sunday evening, and we have a ban list update going out tomorrow. So by the time this video comes out, I cannot guarantee you that what is in this deck will be legal in Legacy, because people are throwing a lot of shade towards Grief and Bowmasters as potential bans. So this is either just going to be showing you a powerful deck that you can play and probably win tournaments with, or I'm showing you a last hurrah of a deck that's no longer going to be viable. So I'm not going to know which one it is until tomorrow. Anyway, so Blue-Black Scam. This is a deck that has been putting up some pretty great numbers. We have the classic Scam package of Troll of Khazad-dum and Grief, where we can put these creatures into the graveyard, getting value on the way down, and then we reanimate them or animate dead them once they're in the graveyard and get even more value. So that's pretty much like the core backbone of the deck. But we also have an Entomb package here to go along with all our reanimation spells. So we can entomb either an Atraxa or an Archon of Cruelty. So we get that sort of hybrid of a relatively fair deck with, like, you know, your Grief, Bowmaster, Force of Will, Daze type stuff. But then we also have this plan where we can just make like a giant monster that can just overtake a game immediately. We've got a couple of Brazen Borrowers as our sort of catch-all spell, which also pitch to our blue spells, because we do have a lot of black spells in our deck. So having more blue spells is certainly useful. And we've got the normal cantrips you'd expect to see. We're a 4 Wasteland deck. This particular build only has 3 Underground Sea and no Undercity Sewers. But we do have 1 Scrubland for sideboard cards that we'll talk about in a sec. We also have the 1 basic island. Sideboard-wise, we are splashing pretty much just for Pest Control here, which is a very powerful card that can blow up a lot of graveyard hate, things like Grafdigger's Caves, Soul Guide and stuff like that. So we can board this in if we need to keep a reanimation package rather than going into the fair mode. What I like about this build is our fair package in the sideboard involves 3 Dauthi Voidwalker, which is very strong, and I've seen some lists that don't run this, and it just seems wrong to me. We've got an Unlicensed Hearse to check our opponent's graveyard, got a Null Rod for the artifact decks and like 8 cards as well as Storm. We've got a little bit of removal because we're pretty shy on removal. It's just the Borrowers in the main as well as the trigger off the Archon of Cruelty, and sometimes Bowmasters can kill stuff. So we've got some pushes to help along with that. Some more counter magic for the decks that are trying to go underneath us. More Borrowers as sort of catch-all answers, and a Hydroblast to help with goblins and such. This is also really useful against any Blood Moon deck because we have the 1 basic island in our deck. Then we just got Murktide Regent, just another creature we can have. I'm not so keen on the Murktide Regents in these decks because if they're attacking our graveyard, it's going to get the Regent as well and stop this from working. So I prefer to have just more Dauthi Voidwalkers most of the time. But this deck lists want a challenge, and it's clearly just playing a bunch of good cards, so why not? Alright, I think that's it for the deck tech. Let's jump in with either an example of a top deck in Legacy or a last hurrah for Blue-Black Scam. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's get jamming. Alright, we are into round 1. We have a pretty clean Entomb Reanimate line. We also have got Force to protect it. I will keep this hand. Our opponent is famous for playing Doomsday, but that doesn't mean they can't be playing something else. Shadowy Backstreet. So Reanimate might be an interesting draw here. We'll see. Just another Force of Will, eh? Okay, let's play this one out and pass. I'm okay entombing in response to something because they are unlikely to be able to reanimate through our double Force of Will hand. This looks like Black-White Scam. Let's just cast this Entomb. Got some protection for what we got going here. I think we put in the Atraxa here because our opponent is likely to have something like a Swords to Plowshares. I'll play this Wasteland out just so we have extra mana in case something random happens. Mana Tithe is a card that exists. I'm not expecting it, but I don't want to get rocked by it. Right, we're in with Atraxa. Normally a pretty good place to be. So what are we looking at here? We can take another Force of Will. Just make sure our opponent never gets to cast anything. I think we'll have a Bowmasters. A Borrower seems fine here. We get a Ponder and an Underground Sea. And now we've got, what, 9 cards in hand. We don't have anything to pitch to this Grief, but that's fine. We're just going to ride this Atraxa all the way to the bank. An Orcish Bowmasters is not going to be doing it. We only really care about a specific thing our opponent can do. So what are we looking at discarding here? I think it's probably a Grief, and just any blue card is fine here. We've got all these Force of Wills just lined up, so I think we can just sit on those and just get rid of a Brainstorm or something. We're just going to bash with Atraxa for a few turns. We'll also get to see if this Wasteland is going to be useful to stop their mana source. Right, so they've got shadowy backstreets. Right, I will just take out this backstreets now. I didn't have anything. Alright, so now we have an island for Daze purposes. Bash for 7. Okay, we got Force of Will blue card ×3 plus Daze. Okay, so our Daze is now off. But they've got to get through triple Force to kill our Atraxa. I don't think they have anything really in their deck that can outclass this. Just trying to dodge things like Solitude and Plow. White. Stoneforge Mystic. I don't think we care about this. What can it get them? I don't think it gets them anything that matters. I think this is just bait to try and feed through a Solitude or something. Yeah, a Cauldron Complete. We race that in a big way, so we don't have to care about that. Our basic. Okay. Don't mind having that. So now our Daze is back up. And our opponent's got one turn to try and figure this out. We've got triple Force of Will and Daze. I'd be very surprised if they can get through this. A Grief. Sure, be my guest. Take a look. Yep, that does much. Our hand was pretty stacked. Alright. So, sideboard-wise, what do we want to be doing here? Our opponent's going to have potentially ley lines in this matchup, which is a real deal. So, I think we want these Dauthis in. We're probably boarding out the plan here. So these probably come out and we board into a bunch of kind of fairer stuff. Do you want another Borrower? It's pretty good against Kaldra, which is the scariest thing their deck does threat-wise. We still got these Reanimates and Animate Deads. We can probably trim on them, but what are we trimming on them for? Maybe, like if we're expecting Leyline, which is the common graveyard hate that these decks tend to run, then boarding inside like Murktide isn't going to help, which kind of is why I don't like it. Unlicensed Test seems reasonable. The Null Rod can stop them activating some equipments, but it's not really how they're planning on winning. I think I'd rather have another Borrower over Animate Dead, but I don't think we can go lower than this. Do we want Force of Negations? I don't think so. We're just going to go in like this on the full scam plan rather than the sort of hybrid scam reanimate. I don't really want this Scrubland, but we can go and find whatever we want with this. We've got a Grief, pitching Grief, but then what? Our hand doesn't really have a route to winning this game. I think we're going to mulligan. Right, I like this one a lot more. We can keep this. And we have some choices to make. I think it's probably the Hearth that goes. Dauthi Voidwalker is just better graveyard hate because it actually clocks at a reasonable pace. Scrubland into Chrome Mox. Alright, that tells us they're on the Chrome Mox build. I quite like the Chrome Mox build, I think. Because the deck doesn't do that much on one. Alright, they're cycling. We're going to see a Reanimate right now. It has to be, otherwise you wouldn't Reanimate on that time frame. Okay, so this probably does a good job of beating us a lot of the time. Right, I think we want this so we can turn on our various like Daze and stuff like that. Does this help us out of this spot? We're looking for like a Brazen Borrower, of which we have 4, so I think we can go any order in shuffle here. We know they've got another land coming as well, in the form of Shadowy Backstreet. We don't have the most amount of time to figure this out. Alright, that Wasteland, yep, just going to be hitting us. This is the scam playstyle sometimes. You just make a big thing, and then it eventually wins the game. My opponent didn't play their land. Oh, sorry, they did play land. Sorry, they played the Wasteland. Okay, so we get hit once this turn. Then we can take one more hit after that, and then we're on 2. So this Reanimate is quickly becoming useless. We need them to like mill a Solitude or something here. But our opponent is good enough to just not mill a Solitude into what we've got going on over here. An unlicensed Hearth. You are a little bit late to the party. So we have an Orcish Bowmasters we can drop, which gives us blockers. We can't block with just 2 of them, but if we find another creature, we get to block. Although, what creatures do we have that actually can block here? Just another Bowmasters, right? Yeah, we're just being cooked by this one play. Just Battle Cruiser Magic. A Grief. We can't really win this game now, can we? What we can do, though, is we're not going to pitch this Dauthi and show them we have the Dauthi. We're just going to pitch this Reanimate, get a look at our opponent's hand, and then concede. Just so we can get a little bit more information if they boarded anything unusual in. Chrome Mox, Plow, Ephemerate, sure. Okay. So the reason why one of the reasons why Black-White Scam is so popular at the moment is because it's very good into Blue-Black Scam, because the white removal just cleans up whatever plan we're trying to accomplish. So I don't think I want this hearse. Are we thinking about going back into the well of these guys? Maybe instead of having Animate Deads, we can just have an Entomb and one Archon, just so we can use that as removal. That seems like a reasonable approach that we can access. I guess we keep one Animate Dead in. Or do you want like a second Entomb? I don't know, Animate Dead, because we can hit our opponent's creatures as well. Island Ponder is pretty reasonable as a start. But we do get picked apart a little bit by Scam. But the problem with Scam, as an archetype that exists, is it encourages you to not mulligan. Because just the raw number of cards is the thing you need to get through a lot of the time. We could Grief Reanimate next turn. We could Grief Reanimate this turn. Oh, sorry, we could Grief this turn and then Reanimate the following turn. But I like having a clean answer to something like a Stoneforge, but this is a clean answer as well. Alright, let's just take our opponent's best card. And then next turn we get to go. This does put a Grief into our graveyard for our opponent, which is not always the best of times. So they have double Stoneforge and a Plough. That is a somewhat awkward one. Just gotten rid of one of our answers to the Stoneforge. We can counter one, but then just reanimating the Grief, what is that going to achieve? I think we have to go for the Stoneforge here. And we're just going to put ourselves in a top deck war, but we are a deck with cantrips and our opponent isn't. So it should be alright-ish for us, but it's going to be a little bit touch and go. Just snow-covered plains. Yep, so they're holding up the Plough here. So I believe our play is to reanimate our Grief and then counterspell their Plough. So here comes the Plough. Say no to this one. And then we can take their only threat here for now. And then we just got to try and clock them with this Grief. If I didn't have the counterspell, I probably wouldn't play the Grief into that situation where they just have a clean answer. They drew another Stoneforge. Yikes. Well, well, well. We've got a fetch land on top of our library. So we are probably not winning this one. They can go and get other equipment as well, like Sword of Light and Shadow is one that you see quite often now. And Sword of Fire and Ice is in a few lists too. So this lets us shuffle away a Brainstorm the following turn. At least they went for the Sash. But what they're going to do is ephemerate this Stoneforge. And they can cast Ephemerate. They can activate the Stoneforge, then they can ephemerate the Stoneforge, and then it'll blink, go and get them Cauldron, and then they can put in the Cauldron. If that's what they want to do. Which they might have to do because of the clock they're on. But they're not blocking Grief here anyway. Is that true? If they activate this to put in Lion Sash, then they blink this. Or they activate this to put in Cauldron, blink this, go and get the Cauldron. Yes, we can't even attack into this board. A Ponder. Alright. You gotta shake something loose here. Give me one of them Borrowers. This Grief isn't it, is it? Okay, this is an any order in shuffle. Yikes. Okay, I think we've lost now. I think we're just too far behind. Because the Ephemerate puts their creature in untapped, so they can block with both, and the first strike of the Cauldron just eats our creature for free. They're going to blink. They're not blinking in response. They're just putting in the Sash. And now they're going to blink it afterwards. Alright, they're just going to start eating our cards. Interesting. They're going to reanimate the Stoneforge. Get the Cauldron, put in the Cauldron, and then we get bashed for... Is there any permanent cards in the graveyard yet? No, but there is a land, so they can activate their Marsh Flats. Alright, they're just coming in for 5. But we at least get to attack now. Just more lands. Alright, we'll keep 2 for Brainstorm purposes. But if we attack here, they can double block, grow this, and it trades off. They can trade just a Lion Sash for our Grief. That's probably a trade that we have to make at this point. We need to Brainstorm into Entomb Reanimate. Or not even Entomb Reanimate, Entomb Animate Dead. Which I think we've only got 1 copy of. So they put us to 1 here, right? Unless they got another fetch land. Oh, they got the Grief here, haven't they, right? So this is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll just show our opponent how bad our hand is. We got absolutely rocked there. Yeah, so what these Rescaminator decks kind of do, either way, is that they kind of condense the game into a very narrow selection of turns. And it kind of puts you... Like, I wanted to be in top deck war when we have cantrips and our opponent doesn't, but our opponent drew their third Stoneforge Mystic, which absolutely blew us apart. Alright, let's go to round 2. We're all kind of dressed up with nowhere to go with this hand, but do we believe in the power of Ponder? We're kind of looking for a land and a thing to do with it. This is a pretty tough call already. I think we can mulligan this one though, because two Animate Deads and a Reanimate is just too much. I'd rather have like a second land. Okay, this is the plan, isn't it? Do we just keep the Reanimate here? Spin off the Animate Dead. That way we can play Reanimate around a Daze. Although we have Force of Will. I think we just do the Reanimate instead. So we can lead off on a Wasteland and then cycle for this. Probably has to be an Underground Sea, given the state of our hand. But these Scam decks run pretty fast and loose with their mana. Pretty tight margins. But that's okay. Polluted Delta. They're cracking their Polluted Delta. A basic swamp. A Thought Seize. Well, we have to cycle this, otherwise we're not getting any mana this game. We'll go and get the Underground Sea. Are we letting this Thought Seize hit? Or are we protecting our Reanimate to get the Troll through? That's kind of a tough one. They can't take us off of Force of Will. I think I'm going to let this hit us. If we had a higher priority target in the graveyard, then maybe I would do things differently. But this sort of deck that our opponent's running with, like, Polluted Delta into Swamp Thoughtseize, so we could be looking at some kind of Storm deck. It's not going to be Scam, because you'd expect to see, like, Griefs rather than Thoughtseizes as a hand disruption. So it makes me think they could be more on the combo front. Okay, they took the Reanimate. That still doesn't necessarily tell us anything, because maybe they're just taking that because they don't want us to have a fast clock. Alright, Modo Bug, why not? Let's just draw Reanimate again. Like, we do have 8 of those effects total in our deck, so it's not completely wild that we would draw one. But it is certainly fortunate. Alright, so our plan now involves turning this sideways 3 times. Another Troll. I'll tap with this one. Cycle this. Let's get another Underground Sea. And carry on. Entomb. I don't really want our opponent to have an Entomb. They knew we had a Force of Will. So it's kind of scary. Our opponent could just be like straight up Black-Red Reanimator. They got another one. Yeah, they are just straight up Black-Red Reanimate by the looks of things. Alright, we are in trouble. We get to bounce out whatever they put in, but they're going to put in something that draws them a bunch of cards, whether that's Atraxa or Grizzlebrand. It's unlikely to be Grizzlebrand when they're on 10 life. So it's probably going to be Atraxa here, unless they've got, like... Okay, Archon of Cruelty, that's fine too. They're just valuing getting our creature out of play, which is pretty understandable, but we will get to play this Brazen Borrower soon. Faith is Looting. So they can reanimate this Archon, because they'll gain 3 life, so they'll only effectively be losing 5. And they'll be having the biggest thing on board whilst sweeping our creature. Just a little mini crawl ultimatum. An Unmask and a Scrubland is what they've discarded from their phase looting. No reanimation though. That means they might have a... No, if they had a reanimate, you'd definitely cast it then. So I don't know what the hold up over there is. Let's attack. It's kind of free for us to brainstorm here, I think. I'm not expecting Bowmasters out of our opponent's deck when they're Red-Black Reanimator. Not in the main deck. So we have a Reanimate now. That seems pretty good. So we'll put this on top so it can't get taken away. Although we're going to draw it, aren't we? So we want to put this second one down so it's like the turn afterwards we draw it. Can I please have your Archon of Cruelty? Right, our opponent didn't enjoy that. So, Scam was a deck that came around in the first place because it was very good against regular Reanimator decks. I'm relatively happy with our spot here. So Force of Negations are a thing that we have to have here as well, given what our opponent has access to. Borrowers are pretty reasonable for taking out one of their guys once it enters play. We do not want to be doing our Entomb shenanigans. We don't want to help them out because they've probably got a lot more reanimation spells than us. So that package is pretty clean. If you want extra Brazen Borrowers, we need to work out where they go. I like the Reanimates because we can hit our opponent's creatures. It's kind of a big deal. The Orcish Bowmasters isn't great unless they're running Grizzlebrand still. Let's have a couple of these. This gives us more blue cards for Force of Will as well. I think that's pretty reasonable. Oh, this one's awkward, isn't it? This is a turn 2 unlicensed Hearse, but our opponent kind of just gets to free roll turn 1 and they're keeping 7, so I think we have to mulligan for some sort of interaction. Okay. We can keep this one. We'll get rid of this Scrubland. So we've got a little bit of interaction. We've got a game plan of our own with the Troll. The chance of them just sending it here are pretty low. They could just show and tell. A Dauthi Voidwalker. Is that a thing that I care enough about to stop? Our game plan doesn't really do anything with this in play. I think we do have to hit this one. Don't feel great about that. Go and cycle this troll, and then we can bring it back. Or we could bring back their Dauthi Voidwalker next turn, which might be better. We do need to survive this turn cycle is the problem. Faith is looting. If they put a big monster in and can't reanimate it, then we're all A-okay. But they also know that. Okay, an Entomb and a Bloodstained Mire. So they haven't fully boarded out of their reanimation package. An Exhume. Alright, we will cycle this. Get land. So they get Dauthi, we get a 6-5. I'll take that trade. We can take them off of one of their lands. They've only got one card left in hand. This takes us further away from hardcasting the Force of Negation, but just constricting our opponent's ability to do two things in one turn. Because if they were to Entomb, Reanimate, they would need to have 2 cards in hand and 2 lands in play. And that's what I'm scared of, alright? We don't care about Lotus Petal. Wait, it's kind of one of the lands for that line that we just mentioned, but Reanimate becomes worse every turn because we're just going to bash them for 6 in the face. We don't have any Surveil lands, which is definitely a shame. Alright, put our opponent low enough that Reanimate shouldn't be reanimating anything anymore. An Entomb. Okay. They've got no cards in hand. They can't reanimate. They can cast an Animate Dead. Okay, they drew a land. This is good because we get to untap, play Force of Negation into whatever they're doing. They didn't attack. What have we got in exile that they really want? A Wasteland. So they can't block with this. Very weird choice to keep that guy back on blocks. What have you got, opponent? Right, they're going to 1. If it's a reanimation spell, we have it covered. A Shallow Grave. Let's say no to that with a Force of Negation. And that's the end of that match. So, yeah. We kind of beat the black-red reanimated decks pretty handily. Then we, in turn, get beaten by the black-white scam decks. Just everyone's scamming in various ways. Our opponent does run Grief in their deck as part of their package. So they are a scam deck as well, after a fashion. But they are more heavily into Reanimator than we are. Alright, we're 1-1. Let's go to round 3. We've got a plan. And quite often, when you're playing this scam deck, you just start off with a plan and roll with it. Let's play out the Wasteland here, give our opponent less information. In the main deck, we don't have black spells. This one might force our opponent to fetch more awkwardly, making removal more difficult later on. A Mox Diamond. Okay, so we're potentially looking at some sort of lands list or green-white depth style. It can be a loam. Going back the Windswept Heath. Sure. Our Wasteland not looking the most useful right now. Let's cycle this, go and get ourselves an Underground Sea. We could have got the basic swamp there. I don't really want our blue source getting wastelanded, so I'm going to play this one out first. Just make a big guy and see if we can ride this all the way. It's odd with this deck. It plays a bit more like a non-blue deck in a lot of ways. Yes, we do have cantrips, but we're kind of just trying to do something really powerful early on and hope it gets there a lot of the time. But crop rotation for Mazavith is going to be pretty good. Expedition map is unlikely to get and play a Mazavith this turn. Reclaimer. Okay. And Wasteland, they're going to take out our Scrubland. They're going to take out our Wasteland. Okay. A Ponder. Let's attack first. That's the easy part. I have to decide if we're pondering or trying to Bowmasters. I think we're going to ponder. Have a Wasteland. Our opponent didn't want us to have a Wasteland, so I'm kind of incentivized to keep that Wasteland. This Daze is very unlikely to do anything, but I think I do want the Wasteland so that we can at least get rid of this Mazavith they're about to play. And having 4 mana means we get to fire 2 Bowmasters, which may be enough to take out Reclaimer. That is unlikely, but it's something we might be able to do. Right, they're getting rid of their forest. This is just going to be a Mazavith, a Tabernacle, and a Wasteland from our opponent. Right, so now they've got the Wasteland Loam Lock. I'm pretty sure we lose this one now. Actually, is that true? We might be able to get there. Because we get to Wasteland their Tabernacle this turn. And they don't have the mana to, at the moment, to do both. We should have forced them to pay for this Reclaimer, actually. That was a bit fast and loose from me. Although the the Tabernacle taps for mana because of the Riftstone Portal. So yeah, we are correct to do that then. Yep, so 11 them back. So we get to hit them once more, and then Bowmaster finishes them off. That is the plan. We've already played their land for the turn. Alright, I think we've got there on this one. We didn't have the most amount of decisions to make this game. But we're getting there. They can't block this because you need 3 creatures to block Troll of Khazad-dum. Super Duper Menace. Go and fetch our Underground Sea here. Play Bowmasters while our opponent doesn't have any mana untapped. Got a Daze that can do stuff if we need to. Alright. We got one against the old lands deck. So Graveyard Hate is going to be pretty solid here. Things like Unlicensed Hearse and the Dauthi Voidwalker. Pest Control also feels pretty strong in this matchup. Brazen Borrower is a thing we get to do sometimes as well. Force of Negation great against the Loam. Force of Will not great in this matchup. Grief's also not very good in this matchup, but it is a creature and I don't know how low we can go on our threats. Daze also looks pretty poor. And then, so Bowmasters is pretty bad, as is Grief. I think we need to keep our Reanimate plan. I kind of want this Null Rod in as well. Take out a couple of Bowmasters. Do you want to take out a third Bowmasters? Leave the Griefs in. Like they all kind of chip in for different amounts of damage. We're looking for something like Murktide here. I don't think so. Right, we're going to go like this. Okay, so we have the hand that does potentially a thing here. Because we're on the draw, we get 2 looks at getting our second land. Maybe we can chuck in a big monster and just have enough resources to push past what our opponent's doing. Exploration is a pretty good start for our opponent. That was like the missing piece from last game. If they had have had that last game, then we would have lost. Alright, so we got a Mox Diamond. We're going to see another land into... Oh dear, an Ancient Tomb. Okay, another Exploration. Okay, our opponent's got 1 card in hand. It's got to be... Oh, it's just a Caracas. Why have they kept that hand? That does not seem like a good hand to me. Would love to have had a land here. Did not find a land. So we just go and get Atraxa. It's not Atraxa, Archon of Cruelty here. Our opponent's hand seemed pretty weak. Oh, that's a very nice one, isn't it? Are we supposed to try and counterspell this? We only have 2 counterspells in our deck. So I don't think we are. What is this going to go and fetch? I guess they can wait till we've done whatever, but I think they're going to want to get it down. It's probably an Urza's Saga in this situation. That was a very good draw for them, though. It's a bit bold to keep a hand that didn't really go anywhere, in my opinion. You need to have, like, a Saga or a Loam or something in your hand to get things cooking. Okay, so they have a Saga. We do not want to draw our Atraxa. Not our Atraxa, our Archon of Cruelty here. I think we have to get an Underground Sea. Our opponent doesn't have any Wastelands in circulation right now. Let's just go and put in our big monster that can't be Caracased. If we draw the land, we get it. If not, then we can do some other stuff. A Ponder. Right, let's Swamp Cycle this guy. Right, do we want to cast a Brainstorm here? I think we just want to Ponder. We're looking for a Wasteland. Entomb, Flooded Strand. Any order shuffle, please. A Dauthi. Okay, that's certainly the sort of thing that I wouldn't mind having in play. But you can see why the Grief is no good here. Maybe we should have Bowmaster instead, but sometimes your opponent will pass with a couple of cards in hand at the start, and then you can Grief them, and at least it's a threat. Okay, Dark Depths. We have that covered, at least. A Reanimate. Does that change anything here? This allows us to Brainstorm first. I think that's pretty good. Alright, this is the Wasteland we wanted. We don't want this Entomb, so we'll shuffle that away next time. I guess we'll keep this Animate Dead. We can play this out, hit this Saga, because this will fetch them the other half of the Dark Depths comics. They're going to make a guy, and then we're going to reanimate our Archon and kill that guy. Now, our opponent can just draw a Life from the Loam at some point and put us absolutely in the dirt. But we'll take what we've got here. Yeah, so we can cycle in our upkeep to get rid of this Entomb using the Troll. Surgical Extraction targeting Ponder. Or you're taking 9. You got 1 turn to find something. It might even be worth trying to surgical extract themselves. Alright, they're just conceding. Alright, pretty easy victory. I think our opponents shouldn't have kept their opening hand because they didn't really do anything. They did draw the expedition map off the top. But yeah, I don't think they should have kept this hand. Like, it can answer like one of our threats, but that's it. I just don't think that's a viable thing to keep. Especially when you can just have really powerful 5s and 6s in land stacks. Alright, so we're 2 and 1, let's go to round 4. Our opener does not contain land, so we are going to ship this one. Ponder can do a lot of work. I'll keep this in bottom of land. We have 8 reanimation effects, so we're most of the way towards a plan. We get 2 stabs at the Entomb as well. Oh, interesting. A mountain. I think I'm going to fetch a basic island here. And I'm going to try and ponder. Grief. Like, we fire off 1 grief. Next turn we draw a grief. Is that really what we're looking for? It's going to be quite a few turns till we hit any reanimation spells. I think we can do better than this. Okay, we have a Brainstorm. So if there is something like a Blood Moon coming in our future, we at least have the Brainstorm and the blue source to go and find ourselves a troll or whatever. Or we could just be getting stomped in the heart by goblins. We'll see. A War Marshal. Okay, so this might be the slower sort of goblins list with vials and things. A grief. Okay, I think now is the time to pitch this grief. Battlecry, Broadside Bombardiers, Ringleader, Simian Spirit Guide. So we could take the Spirit Guide and then Wasteland them. And just try and slow them out. Because they get to start putting all these things out of their hand, we're going to struggle unless you've got a big monster in play. We just need a few turns to buy. So I think I like this plan. Try and take them down. Enough resources. We do need to Brainstorm before our next turn. Alright, these aren't the things we actually want here, are they? Bowmasters is not nothing, though. So one of these cards we're not going to draw again. Should it be the Borrower or the Underground Sea? I think it's the Sea for now. I don't really want to cast this Daze, but we put ourselves in a position where our Daze is going to be very good. Because our opponent doesn't have a lot of mana going on. But if they draw like an Ancient Tomb now, they can just unload a Bombardiers into us. Which is worth us dazing and setting ourselves back a little bit. A Chrome Mox. Okay. What goes underneath this? Matron. And then we take 1 damage this turn. Yeah, by fetching around Blood Moon, we've kind of hurt ourselves a bit here. Battlecry Goblin. Is that good enough for us to daze? Or are we going to try and pick this off with the Bowmasters? I think we have to try and pick this off with the Bowmasters. Otherwise, we're just going to be so far behind in terms of what we're doing mana-wise. Is that Borrower? We could just borrow this Chromox out of play and take more cards off of our opponent, but I don't think that's where I want to be. So if they funnel mana into the Battlecry Goblin, they will hit us for a bunch, but we'll get to take out their Battlecry Goblin. I'm playing around Bowmasters here, or not. Let's get our Underground Sea. Let's make our Orcish Bowmasters. We get to ping off the Battlecry Goblin. Good blocks. I'm happy to trade this off. It's not going to get much better than taking out a creature there. Sure, you can deal me additional 1 point of damage this turn. But that's their whole turn. If we draw Reanimation spell, we can start cooking soon. Grief, that's not really where I want to be, is it? Okay. We're holding open some stuff. The plan is to Entomb. And then maybe draw a good thing. Okay, so now this means that they can play the Bombardiers around our Daze. I think they're going to play around the Daze rather than jam the Ringleader here. There it is. Right, I think we let this one hit us for a little bit. We can bounce out of play next turn if we need to, but I think we want to get our Entomb down right now. Are they going to fling this Goblin at us? They are. So that puts us to 10. We get to Entomb. Hard to say which one I actually want here. Like, Atraxa is a big lifelink in body. But we don't know if they're running Sting Scourge or anything. I'm going to get the Archon of Cruelty and just try and clear their bodies out. We obviously have to draw the Reanimation spell, but we have it, so. Okay, so now we are very far ahead. Possibly an unassailable position. Bounce this to Daze their Ringleader. Right, so we've got Goblins. Pest Control has some text. The Null Rods have some text, but they're not amazing. Fail Pushes are good. Hydroblast good. Borrower is pretty useful. So this is a selection of stuff I'm interested in. The Dazes, certainly on the play, look pretty bad. So I think we need to keep in our big Reanimate plan, because that's something that can go over the top of our opponent. Do we actually want this Null Rod? It's just can stop some of their stuff, but usually a little bit after the fact. Pest Control is a nice way of cleaning up a bunch of stuff, so I'm not opposed to that. The Griefs are fine. The Bowmasters are fine. Reanimate. If we're reanimating like one of our big monsters, that's great. But if we're reanimating the little guys, that doesn't feel super good. I don't think we have the time to be trying to ponder around in this matchup. That doesn't strike me as the best use of our time and resources. And then we still need to cut something else. Is it the Animate Dead? Is that too slow? Or if we're dependent on our big O plan, maybe we need to keep them in. Let's trim another cantrip. I know some people trim all their ponders in this matchup. But we do need blue card density. So this is kind of like before. We do actually have some interaction this time in the form of a Fatal Push. But I don't really like this one enough to keep it. This one is much better. We've got 2 pieces of removal. We've got a Brainstorm to try and get stuff going. I will keep this. I don't think we're about the grief life here. I think that's what goes. Basic man from our opponent. A Skirk Prospector. Sure. So now we'll play out our Flooded Strand and we can crack that to Fatal Push. We've already got our Scrubland for the purposes of Pest Control, which we have 2 of in our deck now. I am pretty tempted to Brainstorm at end step if I don't need to use my mana for anything else. Because we need to be relatively mana efficient in this matchup. Because we're not necessarily going to get the most amount of turns before our opponent puts stuff that we have to deal with. Alright. Ancient Tomb pass. Let's Brainstorm at end step. I don't hate these things. Let's put these 2 away. I kind of want to Wasteland our opponents since they didn't do anything last turn. But that means we're going to be drawing an island next turn, which I don't really want to draw. So I think we're going to play this Polluted Delta out, which enables our Fatal Pushes to hit bigger creatures. So we can hit things like Sticker Goblin. So I've got a Chalice here. They can play an uncountable Muxus. There's a name Sticker Goblin. So we'll crack this. Cast a Fatal Push on the name Sticker Goblin. They could have sacked that for 1 mana, but they probably don't have anything to do with the 1 mana because they didn't play anything last turn off of Ancient Tomb plus Fountain. We'll take the 1. We don't really have a way of winning the game yet. I guess we can play this Borrower out, but I think I'm just going to nail their Ancient Tomb and take them back in terms of raw mana. That can come back to bite us if they have a Cavern, but I think if they had a Cavern, maybe they'd have been playing the Sticker Goblin with a Cavern. Doesn't mean they can't draw one, though. Or they could have been trying to bait us out and then we just got played. Yep, so there's a Cavern. The Skirk Prospector is going to keep chipping away at our life total. Feels like our opponent must have a Muxus. So if they're not casting anything else, that's the only thing, like, would make sense here. An uncountable Battlecry Goblin, sure. This is definitely worth Fatal Pushing. An Orcish Bowmasters, I would play that one. I guess we'll play out our fetch land here. Future, we'll do this now so they can't sacrifice a mana in their turn. They can sacrifice this to stop us getting an Orc, which will reduce our board presence and ability to trade later on. Yeah. Our opponent agrees. Let's get a Prospector uncountable. Okay, we don't have any Surveil lands, which is a shame. Another Force of Will, not looking the hottest right now. I will happily trade my Bowmasters for their Skirk Prospector if they want to offer that. So probably going to be looking at playing a Brazen Borrower as a beat stick in this turn cycle. So our Force of Will could be useful if our opponent does like Sticker Goblin into something else. Like this exact sequence. 4 mana. So they can sacrifice both of these to make a Muxus. But it will not be uncounterable. Just cast this Borrower. And then we got a clock for 4. We go to tax. I'm going to get a basic island off of this. Just in case there is some sort of Blood Moon. There's no harm in getting the basic island. Shaman's Grief. Take the last card. And now we've got, what, 7 damage? So we've got 2 turn clock. We're quite far ahead. This one we've basically just played a sort of fair blue-black game. Alright, so we are now 3-1. And the ones we've won quite convincingly. So 1 more round to go. Let's see if we can put the 4-1 on the board. Island Ponder. I think this is pretty keepable. We're not going to get Wastelanded off. We've got a plan. So we'll keep this. We're also on the draw, so maybe we draw a black source and we just get to Grief Reanimate. Or we can slow things down and try and do an Entomb, get a big one. A Misty Rainforest from our opponent. So this might be the first of the sort of the more slow matchups for us today. Let's ponder. So that does lean into one of the plans we're trying to accomplish. So I think I'll make an Animate Dead sandwich and pass. Meticulous Archives. This is going to be possibly some sort of Beanstalk list would be my guess. the Misty Rainforest plus Meticulous Archive. It's definitely going to be in the blue-white ballpark, that's for sure. So I think what we're going to do is do our whole thing in one big go next turn. Not next turn, the turn after next. And try and get the grief to peak our opponent's hand a little bit. If we get Wasteland or something, then we maybe have to change tack a little bit. There's a Wasteland. Alright. I'm slightly reluctant about trying to Entomb into our opponent's mana, because they will just counterspell that. Right, I'm going to go for an Entomb Brainstorm, so if we can shake loose another black card, that'll really help us out. We did not shake loose another black card as it turns. So we're in a similar position to last turn, so I think we just send it again. Another Wasteland. Understood, opponent. I see what kind of person you are. That really jams us up, actually. Because we want to get an Underground Sea here, but they can just Wasteland it. Alright, I guess that means we're drawing this next card. So I think we grief pitch in this Animate Dead, and we go for the higher play of the Entomb Reanimate strategy. A dress down. Alright, we just get our grief then. That's not as exciting as I wanted. Okay, maybe next time we'll go for our Entomb shenanigans. Well, we have a threat in play at least. Maybe the double Daze can be good. We didn't get Wastelanded. So I wonder what our opponent's building up to. But the longer this game goes on, the more it should favour our opponent, because they've got a lot of stuff. Oh! Dreadnought. That's pretty sick. Alright, our opponent's on something cool. Stifle the Dreadnought, sure. Archon of Cruelty cleans us up relatively well. But we could also just fire off a Brazen Borrower at end step and see if our opponent wants to react to it. We can also crack our Flooded Strand now as well. Alright, so that kind of did what we wanted it to. In a roundabout way. Paved the way for some scarier things. Our opponent is almost certainly running Daze in their deck. So I think we're supposed to untap rather than firing off this Entomb right now. Okay, well, we've got some stuff. Let's reanimate targeting the Archon of Cruelty. We have 3 Dazes. That should be pretty useful. Oh, wowzers, we're just in. Let's say no to this plow. Keep our massive friend around. We could see a really ridiculous stack with loads of Dazes on here. Let me just get to eat them up. Alright, let's try and restrict their mana. Because they need to have quite often 2 mana and the Dreadnought and another mana for the Dreadnought. So it's 2 mana for the dress down, sorry. So that's quite a lot of resources they need. And if they're having to brainstorm and all that sort of jazz, find stuff, it's going to be hard. Alright, we're just in there. Excellent. Okay, Pest Control feels real mean against our opponent, but you can bet I'm going to go and do that. Fatal Push, also pretty solid here. Not into that many of our other things. Borrower, pretty good too. We haven't seen any green mana, so I don't know if they're running Uros. There's definitely a lot of blue-white builds as well as the Bant builds. So what are we looking to do with these cards versus what's in our deck? Daze on the draw is always a little bit squiffy at times. Bowmasters looks great here though. I do like having a Force of Will because they are an A+B assemble a massive guy. So being able to interact with that is quite handy. Are they going to be messing with our graveyard in a way that means that we shouldn't be doing graveyard stuff? I don't think that's the case. I think I want to keep in our big plan. Maybe we're trimming an Animate Dead here. Maybe it's just 2 Animate Deads. Reanimate is a touch risky, because if our opponent hits us once, we can't reanimate a creature. So maybe we're more incentivized to keep the Animate Deads, but the Reanimate is just so good though. No, let's not be silly. Let's try this, because if that gives us the grief scam hands from the start and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I think I'm going to try like this. I'm not going to keep this hand, so let's mulligan. We can keep this. I think I want to get rid of the Wasteland. We don't really have the luxury of pondering on turn 1 because our opponent is a Wasteland deck. But I guess we can grief first and then see. Okay, that definitely changes things a little bit. So I think I'm going to pitch a Troll to do this. Surgical Extractions is something I'm expecting from our opponent. I'm just going to plow this in response. Surgical Extraction, a plow, a Daze, a Doorkeeper Thrall. There's a lot of stuff here. I guess we take the plow because it's the clean answer. We can make them Daze here, but I don't really care about that either. We can take the Doorkeeper Thrall and strand the Dreadnought in their hand. I think I want to take the plow though. Is that true? If we take the Doorkeeper Thrall, what does that do for us? If we take the Extraction, we get to reanimate our Grief, but then it takes one other card. So we pay 4 life to then Thoughtseize them again, basically. This is a really tough choice. We already have the answer for the Dreadnought, though. Maybe it's just the Extraction here. Our opponent is a Stifle deck, so I'm going to cycle this now rather than worrying about it later. I'm just getting another Underground Sea, so if we get Wasteland, we don't get Wasteland off of blue. So we could wait to our opponent's turn, but if we get caught by a Stifle, that's going to be pretty bad for us. We're going to see an end of turn Brainstorm here. So we don't have the mana for the Pest Control yet, but we have a Ponder. We should be able to try and put something together. Because Doorkeeper Thrall has Flash, they can just hold up Plow and Thrall. Right, so we don't know how many of these cards are in our opponent's hands at the moment. Okay, we are on the Bant build. And there is the Doorkeeper Thrall. That is intriguing. 4 cards on our opponent's hand. Would I rather have a Grief here? It's not going to take any cards out of our opponent's hand is the problem. Let me just take the big Troll. Tropical Island, 3 cards in hand. 4 cards in hand. A Dreadnought. We haven't answered this, but we don't have it immediately. This attacks us for 1, then we're dead on the following turn. I think we do have to fight over this, and if it goes wrong for us, we do have Pest Control as an out later. Now they're playing a guy. Sure. So our opponent is in a pretty commanding spot. A Fatal Push. We can use that in response to another Dreadnought, and then the Dreadnought goes straight to the graveyard, because the Doorkeeper Thrall won't be around. Alternatively, we can just point it at a Dreadnought. We may as well try for the 2-for-1 there. A Borrower is not that exciting. I don't think we're in cycling Pest Control mode yet. But I didn't really want to get the... Ooh, another one of these. Interesting. So I didn't really want to get the Scrubland earlier because we only have one of them. And if our opponent Wastelands us, that just turns off all of our Pest Controls. So we're kind of in a bit of a bind with that one. I think we were right to just get the Underground Sea. There's a Ponder from our opponent. There's a Wasteland. I'd like to Wasteland my Underground Sea. We could cycle this Pest Control. We already do have another answer. Alright, we'll go for the cycle here. Right, we got a Brainstorm out of it. The little Thralls are going to come in and give us a little bit of beatdown. I think Ponder is better than Brainstorm here. Daze. Yeah. Seems good. They've got another Wasteland. I think we can probably neatly package ourselves right into the dirt. Okay, I didn't have the follow-up Wasteland. Okay, let's Brainstorm. Deck. Hello? Hello? Oh dear. Not a big fan of where we're at here. I guess we put these 2 on top. I think Pest Control pitching to Grief is the thing we can think about. But is that the thing we're doing right now? I don't think it's the thing we're doing this turn. We might need it to make sure that our removal spell on a Dreadnought works. And I'd much rather do that. Right, Tropical Island is certainly not a Dreadnought. Bowmasters. Again, I think we're going to save the Grief. That's what, 6-turn clock? We should be able to shake something loose before these Thralls kill us. An Uro. Okay. That's the thing we can kill, but it will come back. I'm not a fan of that one either. How are we supposed to beat this is the question I'm asking myself. So we can Grief our opponent and then Fatal Push their Uro. All that does is slow them down a tiny bit. I don't think that's worth doing. Okay, I'm going to take one more draw and I think I'm going to scoot this one up. Well, we're going to be dead pretty soon anyway. Uro is just such a good card against Scam because it just undoes all of the way you pick apart their hand. Alright, we're on 1 life. Fetch land off the top. It was an island, so it's a thing we get to cast. We can't remove all of their things though. Yeah, we just done there. Okay, so I think we probably want a little bit of something for this Uro. That's probably Dauthi Voidwalkers rather than Hearse. I think Dauthi Voidwalker is just better. What are we supposed to remove here is the issue. Maybe we don't need 4 Borrowers, we can just have 3. Only gives us 1 Dauthi though. Like the Archon and the Atraxa are both pretty tasty here. So I don't want to lose those. I want to keep our graveyard stuff because I think that's just a good way we can go over their big things. Pest Control was not the easiest thing to cast. and our opponent is running Wastelands, but it does remove the whole thing their deck's built around. So I think it would be a weird thing not to do, not to have. Maybe we just want a hearse instead, and just use that to take the hero out. All right, we can't keep this one, so a mulligan. We've got Entomb, Reanimate with Grief. One of these cards has got to go. Is it the Brainstorm or is it the Wasteland? I think we're going to pitch the Wasteland here. Alright, our opponent's on 5 cards, so this is a good sign for us. Let's Reanimate to Grief our opponent. Let's see your opening hand. A Doorkeeper Thrall and an Uro. Okay. This goes away. We can go and get a Swamp. Or I know our opponent can't do anything about it. We're just going to go and put probably a Atraxa in the graveyard. I think that's where we want to be here. Just have a nice big reload. It clocks a bit slower than the Archon, but the reload is pretty powerful. So played a Flooded Strand, which is one of the lands we saw. We're not jamming here, so can I have my big monster? If they found a Daze here, then this is a real game. Alright, they did not find the Daze here, and they just scooped it up. Alright, so we finished the game, the league even, with a 4-1 record, which is, you know, pretty good. We only lost to Maxtortion playing the black-white scam build, which is better against the blue-black. The reason why it's better as well is because you have lots of clean answers for the big plan. So you have 4 Solitudes and 4 Plows. So putting a big monster in just doesn't do anything. And quite often this sort of Rescaminator deck ends up kind of throwing its hand on the table saying, we got you beat. And when your opponent can actually come back from that, then they can do a lot of work. And they have, you know, similar sort of grief scam packages themselves. So let's talk about this deck. So, do I think anything is going to get banned from this? Now, this is an awkward one because the ban list comes out tomorrow, and this video is probably going up Wednesday for my midweek meta slot. So, I could look very foolish if I make the wrong call, but I think there is a potential for Grief to see a ban. I don't think Orcish Bowmasters necessarily needs to go. I think it keeps in check things like Beanstalk a little bit. And what I like about Orcish Bowmasters is that, yes, it goes in blue decks, but it's not very good against non-blue decks as a general rule. Like, there are some decks where you get to ping things off and it's fine. But a lot of the time, this is good against the blue decks, but not so much against the non-blue decks. So, yeah, blue decks will be playing it against each other and it's a useful tool, but it gives non-blue decks something to fight blue decks with. It's why, another reason why mono-black scam tends to beat the blue-black scam. Because you kind of ignore their Wasteland axis, you ignore their Bowmaster axis as well. But do I think Bowmaster is going to get banned? I don't think so. It could do. I think Grief is the more likely one to get banned because it doesn't promote very healthy or fun play patterns. I think the problem with the pitch elementals is that this one is the outlier. All the others are reactive, so you're either countering their spell, killing their creature, you know, removing their graveyard. Whereas this is the one that is a proactive thing. So you get this down first and it's really strong. And then obviously the synergy with Reanimate is pretty disturbing at times. So I wouldn't be surprised if Grief caught the ban here. I think that would make more sense than Bowmasters, but obviously people want Bowmasters as well. Maybe they'll do both. Maybe they'll do neither. Maybe they'll unban something. I don't know. But you lovely people already do know because this is Wednesday for you. As for how I feel about this deck, like, yeah, it feels fine. You know, it does powerful things. You don't always have the most amount of agency. I think of all the Brainstorm Ponder decks I've played in Legacy, this is one of the ones that feels like it has the least amount of agency in it. Because we're kind of just trying to, like, chuck a big O in, right? And you have to play the hand you have dealt a lot of the time because you're running on very low resources. And you use those low resources to, like, you know, Grief, Reanimate, Grief, or Troll, put that into play, or Entomb, Reanimate. And that's kind of all you have going on. I prefer blue-black regular scam in terms of playing with it because I think it's a more enjoyable play experience because there's a lot more back and forth and you do a lot more cantripping and stuff. And you have less of this, like, just 8 block of Reanimate spells and then this whole thing going on. So, as anyone who's played Black-Red Reanimate will tell you, after you've played it a few times, you don't have the most amount of agency. It's your mulligans, and that's mostly where it lies. And I sometimes feel similarly about this deck. It's not really my sort of jam, but it's clearly a very powerful thing, and it does showcase a lot of the stuff in the format that people are doing right now that is really strong. You know, like the Bowmasters, like the Grief, like the Trolls Reanimate package. Like, it's just most of the best stuff in Legacy kind of crammed into a deck. But there are other decks doing similar things that do beat this. And sometimes you do feel a little bit helpless with this deck. There's definitely many axes upon which you can fight it. White decks are generally very good against it. But the fact that there's like a black-red scam deck, a mono-black scam deck, a black-blue scam deck, a black-white scam deck, you know, maybe it is the time for scam to get hit with a ban. We'll see. I don't think it's significantly overpowered, but it's not a particularly enjoyable or player skill dependent play pattern, really. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Grief go. I think it would open some things up. Bowmasters going would certainly open up options for playing some X1s in some decks that you couldn't before, because a lot of X1s have just sort of dropped out the format. Maybe get our Baleful Strixes back. But I think if you just ban Bowmasters, then this deck just plays like Baleful Strix in this spot, and it's pretty much just as good. So I think hitting the Grief would be a healthier way to approach the format, really. Sideboard-wise, I really don't like the Murktide in the sideboard. I mentioned that before. I think you want things that don't have anything to do with the graveyard in your sideboard if you have additional threats. I know I have a friend of mine and they play Triumph of St. Catherine as part of their sideboard package. They're more heavily into whites. They have Pest Controls, Source to Plowshares, and Triumph of St. Catherine as options. I think that's fine. I think just more Dauthi Voidwalkers is also fine. But it's nice to have like a big creature, but I'm just not convinced that you want to play a big creature that's graveyard related. But yeah, that scam. Either this was a last hurrah or it was a demonstration of a thing that you're going to be playing against in a lot of leagues. So who knows? But I hope you enjoyed this one. So once again, congratulations to Batutina for winning a Legacy Challenge with this deck. It's clearly very powerful. And maybe you're watching this and it's banned. Who knows? Alright, remember to like and subscribe. It does help the channel out. And I hit 3,000 subscribers the other day, actually. So that was pretty exciting. So thank you everyone who's helped me hit that milestone. And once again, thank you so much for watching. And goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel. A mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles. And lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.